North Korea is coming back online this morning after a sweeping internet breakdown in the country.
It happened just days after North Korea denied involvement in the Sony Pictures cyber attack. Bob Orr is in Washington, where U.S. officials are keeping quiet about the internet.
It was a cold December night when suddenly an entire country vanished from the internet. No warning, no explanation. No one inside North Korea could reach the outside world, and no one outside could reach in.
After days of spotty internet service, Monday's outage completely cut off North Korea's online access to the rest of the world.
Veil. Let's remove the veil.
In a world so dependent on digital connections, this blackout was extraordinary. But in North Korea, a country already isolated, the sudden disappearance was terrifying. It was as if the last, fragile thread connecting it to the outside world had been cut. And it didn't take long for the whispers to begin. Had the US finally struck back? Had hackers found a way to bring an entire nation to its knees? Or was it something even stranger? This is the story of how one of the most secretive countries on Earth was unplugged. Not by bombs, not by sanctions, not by soldiers marching across its borders, but by the invisible hand of the internet. For decades, North Korea has been a black hole of information. Its leader, Kim Jong-un, rules with a grip so tight that most of his citizens don't even know what the internet is. Ordinary North Koreans live in a digital prison with access only to a tightly controlled intranet filled with propaganda and government-approved information. But for the elite, the military, the hackers, the intelligence services, there is a pipeline to the outside. And that pipeline is thin. By 2014, experts estimated North Korea had only a handful of connections to the global internet, fragile threads running through China and Russia. It was this fragility that made the attack so devastating. The trigger? A Hollywood movie. That year, Sony Pictures released The Interview, a comedy about assassinating Kim Jong-un.
You want us to assassinate the leader of North Korea?
Yes.
The North Korean regime considered it an act of war. In retaliation, hackers believed to be linked to North Korea launched a massive cyber attack on Sony, leaking emails, unreleased films, and humiliating secrets. It was one of the most destructive hacks ever seen against a US company. But America doesn't forget. Just weeks later, on December 22nd, 2014, North Korea's internet simply went dark. At first, it looked like a glitch, maybe bad weather, maybe a technical fault. But as minutes turned to hours, and hours into days, it became clear this was no accident. North Korea had been disconnected. Experts around the world scrambled to find answers. One researcher described watching North Korea's few websites, news portals, state-run servers, propaganda outlets blink off the map, one by one, like candles being snuffed out. In retaliation for a regime obsessed with control, it was humiliating. Their cyber army, once feared for attacking banks, stealing cryptocurrencies, and spreading malware across the globe, couldn't even defend their own connection. But here's where the mystery begins. Who did it? Some pointed to the United States. After all, the timing was suspicious. President Obama had just promised a response to the Sony hack.
We will respond. We will respond proportionally, and we'll respond in a place and time and manner that we choose.
Could this blackout have been America's quiet revenge? Others weren't so sure. A small group of independent hackers claimed responsibility. They called themselves the New York Times of cyber warfare. Armed not with missiles, but with laptops, they said they had bombarded North Korea's servers with relentless traffic. A digital siege known as a DDoS attack. Could a handful of hackers, sitting in their bedrooms, really unplug an entire country? The answer, disturbingly, was yes. Because North Korea's internet wasn't just fragile, it was almost laughably small. By targeting just a few weak points, attackers could overload the system and collapse it. It was like cutting a single road leading into a city, and suddenly, nothing could get in or out. But maybe that's too simple. Some cybersecurity experts argue that the blackout may have been allowed, or even quietly encouraged, by larger powers. Perhaps the US wanted to send a warning without firing a shot. Perhaps China, tired of its unpredictable neighbor, simply looked the other way. In the shadows of cyberspace, truth is hard to find. And that's the haunting part of this story. We still don't know for sure who pulled the plug. What we do know is what it revealed. North Korea's image has always been one of strength. Missiles paraded through the streets, soldiers marching in perfect lines, the leader's face plastered on every wall. But the blackout exposed something else, vulnerable. For all its bravado, the regime depends on a fragile connection to the world it pretends to despise. And in December 2014, someone proved just how easy it was to make that connection disappear. For the rest of the world, it was a strange spectacle. For once, North Korea, the hacker, had become the hacked. The aggressor had become the victim. The nation that terrified its enemies with the threat of cyber war had been silenced by its own weakness. But inside North Korea, the consequences were real. Officials lost access to their international networks. Propaganda outlets were silenced. Embassies abroad scrambled for answers. In a system built on control, losing control of information was a nightmare. And here's the unsettling truth. That blackout was just a taste of what cyber war might look like in the future. No explosions, no sirens, no troops on the ground. Just silence. A country unplugged. It showed the world that in the digital age, wars don't have to be fought with bombs. They can be fought with code. And sometimes, a few keystrokes can be more powerful than a missile. Years later, the mystery still lingers. Was it America's revenge? A rogue band of vigilante hackers? Or a quiet message from North Korea's own allies? We may never know, but one thing is certain. In that moment, the curtain was pulled back on the illusion of invincibility. Even the most secretive nation on Earth could be silenced with the push of a button. And maybe that's what makes this story so haunting. Because if an entire country can be unplugged overnight, what about the rest of us? When the lights go out, when the connection is severed, what will we see in the silence? And who will be behind it? The day North Korea lost its internet wasn't just about one country. It was a glimpse of our future, a warning written in code, and a reminder that in the invisible world of cyberspace, we are all more fragile than we think. And that's the story of the night North Korea disappeared from the internet. A nation silenced, not by missiles, not by fire, but by a handful of fragile cables and the unseen hands reaching through them. But this isn't just about North Korea. It's about us. Because the same fragility exists everywhere. They all run on connections just as vulnerable, just as breakable. The blackout was a reminder that power doesn't always look like tanks in the streets or planes in the sky. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it's just nothing. So the question isn't whether North Korea's internet can be unplugged. The question is, what happens when it's our turn?